Welcome back to News Check. We are looking at the state of politics in the country and more specifically the role of religious institutions when it comes to creating harmony just before we get into the 2022 succession politics and the by-elections that are currently underway. Thank you, Sabila Tom Kitikoi, watching live from Koli District, Somalia. And Eliakim Rop, you are also watching. Somebody who left a message and said, just say thank you, Bishop, so that somebody saying hi to you and saying good work.
Thank you so much.
Before the break, we're talking about politicians and their big pockets, and also EACC and other quarters. I talked about the funding that politicians generally do give churches, huge sums of money. Of course, it's really hard when somebody is funding you to be talking ill about that person or actually trying to discredit that person, even if he's doing something that could not really be something very nice. So how do the religious institutions strike the balance between politicians and what their major role is in creating harmony in the country?
That is quite a controversial debate, and it becomes controversial because the church law is a law that includes growing people to be good stewards of the resources that God has given them. That's a part of our responsibility.
Yes.
To ensure that people grow, they don't remain where they are. And part of the growth process to stewardship includes giving. So because when they give according to the way God guides and directs, they give their tithes, they give their offerings, they give to support the poor, they give to support the vision of the church. That is part of the stewardship. Now, and therefore the church can never broke that process of someone from giving, because it would be undermining our very role of growing stewards. We do not grow stewards only from those who have, but even those who don't. And it is the responsibility of the church to have equitable relationships with the people, regardless of whether they have or they do not have. However, it is very wrong for a politician to give the money to church expecting that he will get some favor out of it, or that it's like, it would be like a bribe actually. If the reason for giving is so that you can propagate your political ideologies, that would amount more to bribe.
And corruption actually.
Corruption actually. Yes. And it is a responsibility of the church leadership to be sensitive about that. However, it is not very easy to determine the motivation of why someone is giving, because there are people in that church who will give even more than the politician.
Yes.
But they are not interested in any favor, or they will not even ask for the forum to speak to the people.
Yes.
Because of what I've just said, growing them into good stewards of the resources that they have. The role of the church is to take care of the poor. We can only take care of the poor when we are able to help the people who have to share what they have with those who do not have. The role of the church includes bringing up the vision of the church, which has also structural development, which requires funding and finances. So, and you cannot leave out a politician funds if they need to be part of that development. But then we need to be more careful to know why exactly they are doing that, or why they are bringing that amount of money. But I also know that the narrative about politicians giving money to the church is also advanced from a political front. So the concern is more from the political side, which is part of the political confrontations and divisions that people have in trying to outdo each other in their strategies of doing things. So if a politician is clearly supporting the work of the church with the clear intentions, and then they don't only do that during political season or campaigns, that is a very welcome gesture which we need to encourage. However, we as church leaders should not give them special treatment or receive that as something that might amount to corruption. So the first question we ask ourselves is, where is that narrative coming from? Who are the people who are so much concerned that the other politician is giving? And could they also probably challenge them by also giving? So that we have a balance whereby everyone is giving to support the work of the church, and then nobody would be feeling threatened or intimidated by the gift of another person. It would be extremely unfair for the church to treat some people special because of their gift. Because of
what they are bringing in. And of course, when we get closer and closer to the general elections, they come out with all the bags. Away from that, immediate former CJ, David Kenani Maraga urged President, just before he left office, urged President Uhuru Kenyatta to quell the rising political temperatures. Of course, it has been brought about by a number of factors, the by-elections, the BBI. So after that, looking at his words, I do remember during the BBI launch and at the Bomas of Kenya, Bishop Oginde did talk about the executive need to dance the Jerusalem dance, because of course it's open secret now that there has been some issues in the executive between of course the president and his deputy, but we haven't seen the church coming out to try the Jerusalem dance that Bishop Oginde talked about during the BBI launch at the Bomas of Kenya. Why is that?
Yes, good question. The reason is because we even feel like the Jerusalem dance is no longer the way to go. Because following the way the events have gone, things do change. And we are now at a position where we feel that we don't need reggae.
Yeah.
We don't need hustler.
Yes.
We don't need Jerusalem.
Yes.
We just need to be calm and back to where we were before all these dances. We were better people.
Yes.
We were a better nation. We were more united.
But the problem, looking at the last couple of days, we've seen His Excellency talking about how the BBI in the Mount Kenya region, we have seen the former VP, Kalonzo Musyoka, and DP throw stones at each other. But the religious institutions are really quiet. The silence is deafening. Yes, we are silent, but we are not inactive. We are active. You're silent but not inactive. Yes. How are you not inactive? We are number one. We are extremely active in helping our members and the Kenyan society to respond in a sober manner. We are talking to them on how to receive all these kind of messages. We do not have, our voice may not be heard so much, but and we are praying for the nation too. That one we will always do, even when we are not being seen like we are active. Let me tell you, there is no time that Kenyans have prayed for the nation like this time, and the church is actively engaged. Praying right from within the church, at home, individually, completely, jointly as a brothers, praying for this nation. So that is a great responsibility that we will always do, and which we are doing. That's why I say we might look like we are silent, but we are not inactive. In addition to the role of prayer, which we believe strongly is key and critical, and it is what has led us to where we are today. We are also helping our people to remain sober, because every time the things that we hear out there from the politicians are enough to make the people so much divided. But coming to the dances, honestly speaking, it is now we are at a point now where we probably need to have a stop of all those dances. Indeed, and still on the same, the narrative of hustlers and dynasty, actually, a lot of people are talking about we are incubating a problem. What is the position of religious institutions? Because also on that, the religious institutions are still quiet. Yes, we are quiet, not because we buy into any of this, but we are quiet because
First of all, we are in disbelief, and that we can be in that campaign mode all those months before even the elections.
Yes, the political drumbeats are already on.
It is shocking. It's difficult for us to believe that that what we are seeing is actually happening. But as we deal with this aspect of the competition that we are seeing, we are also getting ready to prepare the people to go on with their normal lives. That's where our focus is. And you will recall in another forum that we had right here, we talked about the role of the national cohesion,
yes,
and all that.
And integration commission, yes.
That is one of the reasons that makes us begin to watch and ask ourselves. It is true we have our role as religious leaders, and our role is not official. It is not an office, but where are the people of the national cohesion? Why don't they speak? Now, when the retired Chief Justice spoke, that was not the first time that the church, we were saying that something is wrong. We had spoken even before he did. We said we don't like the direction things are going. We would like, even when David Ogido was speaking at Bomas,
yes,
talking about the toning down, that is the voice of the church. That still remains our position, that we need to either tone down or completely abandon these processes, because particularly when it comes to the way we are pursuing the BBI agenda, we are shocked that BBI is meant to be an initiative to build the bridges. But the way the direction things have gone as at now, which probably the outgoing Chief Justice is calling drumbeats, it is undermining the entire purpose and reason for which it was. It is in this document where there's a whole subject and whole chapters on divisive politics,
yes,
which the document seeks to prevent or to do away with.
Yes.
But yet, in the promotion of the same document, there's probably more divisive at an early stage than any other, which we really, God forbid, that it doesn't continue the way it is, because it will actually be much greater, yes, than before.
It could be incubating a serious problem.
A serious problem.
Yes.
It is in the same document that most of all the things that it seeks to safeguard, by virtue of the way it is, the way they are doing it right now, it is actually undermining the entire thing. So the question still now comes back again. Are there things that are within the BBI the real causes of the problems that we have? Because if they are, even when we have those nice written points, and we are just at the process of beginning to discuss it, why are we then having more problem on the same issues that they're talking about? Ethnicity, yes, is a huge chapter right there.
Yes.
But in the process of selling and promoting the BBI, then we have found the ethnic tensions and division more than ever.
You're actually funding them.
Yes, we are actually funding them, and yet we are funding them as we promote the document that is supposed to finish them. So when you look at the divisive elections, when you look at the ethnicity, when you look at the inclusiveness, in the process of promoting the document, we are more exclusive.
Yes, and still on ethnicity, you've mentioned something very important. How can the religious institution positively enable Kenyans to transcend ethnicity so that religious institutions become units of political change?
Our greatest law, which unfortunately we have not been able to do to the maximum, is to help the politicians themselves. If the religious leaders, we would be successful in creating sober politicians, in creating politicians who, in the real sense of the word, are for unity and not just political slogans. If we are able to handle that, then we would have solved all these other problems. Because when there is no election, honestly speaking, we live together as neighbors. Our children go back to the same schools.
Yes.
When they're, even now, the current situation that we are in,
yes,
has only come because of envisioning the 2022. And that is why it has become difficult to understand the borderline between 2022 and BBI becomes very thin and so merged up that it is not possible to be able to tell which is which and which one we should be involved in. And that's why we say it is probably time that we take a break. And that's probably why you think the church is silent.
Yes.
Take a break, help our children go back to school after being home for a long time, a critical priority. That's a major priority. Help people deal with the second wave of COVID. It's good news to hear that it's coming down.
Yes.
But the impact on the issues, help people address the economics and the poverty that has come resulting from the effects of the COVID. It is probably time that we abandon these discussions of BBI and the rest of the subjects and begin to focus on more unity. But I want you to know that before these conversations began, no Kenyan was looking at the other one as this tribe or that tribe. And you have never seen Kenyan people.
In fairness, it always comes when we are getting closer and closer to the general elections.
Yes.
And perhaps, how can religious institutions, because they don't do this, how can they scale up dialogue? Leave alone the politicians, leave alone our leaders, and teach on a regular basis on moral, ethics, integrity, so that even people make a decisive decision when they get to the ballot.
Yes, that is a critical role of the church, and we hope that the government and the leaders in this country, including the politicians, would see the value of the civic education, particularly being a responsibility or conducted by the church. That would bring a whole difference, because we are nonpartisan. We are the people who have the networks. We know our people. We listen to them every day, and that again explains the reason why we might appear like we are silent at times. Because when you go to the grassroots and you listen to the people and you feel the issues that they are hurting about, you become very irrelevant to involve yourself and spend your time in political stuff and the other things that are going on. So you really want to help the people, particularly the common mwananchi, address the issues and the problems that they are having today on the ground. Now, you've asked a good question. How can we do this better? I think we need to be consistent in our training of the ethical values and speaking into these issues, which we do. We need to be more to get more opportunities, which probably we also don't have, other than the one that we have within our religious institutions. And we need to have more dialogue with the politicians themselves, because I think this country, just like many others, is too political. Everything is politicized, and the politicians seem to take that to be something that they can take people any direction, and that's why you see when they start calling that one this tribe, that tribe. As long as the politician is saying that, people begin to see themselves as tribal. But in the day-to-day affairs of the Kenyan people, when there are no elections, there is no 2022, there is no for or against BBI, we are united people. We do our business together. When I come to your store, I don't want to know who you are or what tribe you are. I just want to know the product that you are dealing with. When people come to my church, I can't even tell you which tribe they come from. We are Kenyans, and we are peaceful people, and we love one another. When you go to the estates where people live, even in this city, they don't do their social gatherings based on which tribe or which part of the country you come from.
That's true.
Their monthly, their welfare meetings, their benevolence meetings, their birthday parties for their children, and the things they do together there is no tribal ethnic agenda in that. But wait until the politicians start looking for votes.
Yes.
So one of the things that we need to do is we need to help our people, Kenyan people, understand that politics is divisive. And it does not matter what document we put in place. It does not matter how many chapters we put in a BBI document or any other, or in a constitution. Politics is divisive. And it is divisive because the politician believes they must divide the people so that they are able to rule. It's a divide and rule.
Yes.
And that's where the issue is. Even as we talk about divisive politics and ethnicity and all that, what we need to be addressing is the question of dividing people for power. That for a politician to be able to pass through, they will divide these people in this side, so that they find their way for power, so that they find a place to pass through. And that's why I said that as a church, we probably need to do more to help our political class to understand that you can still become a politician by casting your vision, by being a leader who helps the people see the needs that people have and come up with clear plans on how you'll reach that vision and help your people become part of your teamwork as Kenyans. That kind of politics is what we probably need.
Yeah.
Yes.
And indeed, I concur with you that a lot of people have given up on the political process because of how it is carried out, and mostly in third world countries. But do you believe religious institutions are encouraging their members to be to appropriately engage in the political process? Of course, you know very well, we are the same people who put these leaders in power. Do you believe religious institutions are on the forefront to encourage their members to participate in the election process? Looking at even the by-elections, you find like the ones that were done last month, actually in December. Looking at those by-elections, there's something that was a common denominator. The percentage of those people who actually availed themselves to vote was so low because of a number of factors, including intimidation. Others actually don't even understand the whole election process.
Let me start from where you have headed.
Yes.
One of the main reasons is, other than the intimidation and those others for the low turnout, is apathy among the people. And apathy is brought about by what I said earlier, that like I saw in Uganda last week, where I interacted with the leaders, and they have this feeling, well, the graph is drawn mentality. Yes.
we know the outcome.
We know the outcome.
Yes.
We know the outcome. And the fact that people have tried to bring change for a long time, and they have not been able to do that, that attitude is what is resorting to where we are, and it is becoming greater and greater. The more you interact with people, I do travel in this country. I have a lot of work going on in Samburu, Turkana, schools and boreholes and things there. A lot of work going on in Marsabit, Garisen, and all over the place. And the feeling is the same, that if I'm only needed to cast my vote during a political season, and then just to put someone in power, then they go their way, and then become just corrupt and take what belongs to me and to them together. I have no business with what they're doing. That is the feeling, and that is the attitude you see reflected in those by-elections, and it's not going to get any better. People have that apathy. People feel like the corruption within their leaders is beyond their ability to bring change. But going back to our role as religious leaders, we don't give up ourselves. So we continue to help the people understand that failing to participate in those political processes is actually participating by placing people there whom you don't want to be your leaders. And so we help them. We help them to see the need of doing that. But it goes back to the key point that we have said before. The church plays the role of civic education on their own. What if this was to be an official role or in partnership with the existing institutions where the church, or not the church, just the religious leaders who are the people, that they are able to be given the role and the mandate for civic education. That would make a lot of difference because they will not go there to promote a certain candidate or to promote another candidate. They will not go there to divide the people. There's no way the religious leaders will divide the same people that they are telling to unite. And we know clearly that politicians believe they must divide the people so that they rule, for power. But the church exists to unite the people. The religious leaders exist to unite the people. Because almost all the religious leaders that I can think of, the main message is that there's a supernatural being who loves the people, who is the source of humanity, and who wants the people to live together as human beings in love. So the primary role of the church is to want to connect people with their supreme being, the God who loves them and who wants to bring people to himself and to one another. That is the primary message. But it is the opposite. The politicians bring the opposite of that. When they come in and say, so when the religious leaders have taken time to try and help people understand that message of love, of a God who loves the people, the politicians come and say, but you know, they bring the language of they and us.
Yes.
They did this, they did that, or we need to do this so that they don't do that. So they bring in and they blind people now in terms of ethnicity. You are from Mount Kenya, you are from Western, you are from whichever part. Those languages are political languages. They are not church languages. Those languages are from people who know very well that if they divide the people, they'll have a place to ride on. And I think it's a mark, I see it as a mark of political bankruptcy. If you cannot be able to promote your vision and your agenda without dividing the people into ethnic groups, that's bankruptcy, and probably those kind of politicians also need to get home and sit and rest, because it is very painful when the religious institutions are working to unite the people and the people are struggling with the food, they are struggling with the school, they are struggling with health, doctors are on strike. People are out there just dividing the same people, promoting their own selfish interest.
Indeed. And picking from what you had touched on, being an ideal politicians perhaps even hide in religious institutions to camouflage, for lack of a better word. Some politicians have mastered that art of camouflage, of exploiting religion to mask their sources of wealth and the sources of wealth and alleged corruption.
Yes. And again, it takes us back to the problem of determining who has what wealth from which side. And this is why I said from the beginning that partnership with the institutions that we have doing their work. For example, we have EACC that deals with the corruption matters. If we are partnering together, there is something the church can do that the EACC cannot do. There is something they can do that the church cannot do.
Yes.
But now, if we do not work together to build a moral, upright Kenya of people who are people of integrity, it becomes very difficult for any single institution in this country. Even the executive itself, there is no way it can exist on its own and build the kind of nation that we are talking about. But corruption is a big threat to everything else that we need to do in this country. It is huge. That is why when we start talking about the politician giving money in the church, that money is look like as though they are giving so that they can buy their opportunity to speak, which may not necessarily be the case. But because, and the politician may be giving thinking that way, because we are living in a corrupt culture that I want to silence the people with my gift.
Yes.
But again, we need to address the issues of corruption. And I've been saying that we already have the chapter 6 in the Constitution, the leadership and integrity. And that alone, when it was put there, I thought we will never again be dealing with leadership and integrity issues. But several years down the line, we still see the same leaders, corrupt guys, the same, even if they have not been convicted.
Recycled.
The same recycled.
Yeah.
The same people leading, and surprisingly or ironically, they are the same who will talk about corruption.
That's ironic.
I find it very ironic,
yes,
that guys who have many corruption cases, that they are the same ones who stand and point a finger, at others. But where we are right now, we are at an alarming point in this country, in the issues of corruption. I think there's too much talk and very little action. That's why we get very excited when we hear somebody has been, the whole process, due process has been taken, somebody has been taken to court, but sometimes we don't hear anything after that. But we are in an alarming situation whereby it is open. The other day I listened to the president's message in the vernacular radios, and I was really, as a leader, I felt very low and very discouraged when I heard the emphasis that came out, that these people have billions. They have stolen billions.
Yes.
And it came out with a lot of pain in him, that these people have a lot of billions. They should not tell us that that the BBI process is going to cost these billions, because they already have billions. So now what that left me very discouraged is to ask, so it seems like we have accepted that we know who has what, and we know they have it. But my question remained, what are we doing about it?
Indeed.
What are we doing about it? I know that person X has billions, is stolen, it's not his. We have the process and mechanism of dealing with that. But what are we doing? What are we doing about it? And if we become have the same apathy in the top leadership about how to deal with such problems, and then the people on the ground have the apathy that the leaders they vote are going to be corrupt, so there's no need of wasting their time going to queue there. Then who is? Yeah. Where are we going to land? Yes.
Yes. Actually, when we come back, we will be talking about also civic education. I do remember during the distribution of the 2010 Constitution, I was part of that media team that we traversed various counties. Of course, then we didn't have counties, we had provinces then. And I saw the role of the church in educating the masses on the 2010 Constitution, even before we passed it. I remember Jisome, Jiamulie and stuff. You do remember that. Yeah. So what is the role of the church, and especially now that we are seeing some political temperatures rising, and also we will be talking about toning down on that political heat. When we come back, we'll be talking about that. Of course, I'm joined by the founder of Glory Outreach Ministries, Bishop David Thagana Munyiri, and we'll be talking more on that. Kindly be part of the conversation. We are live on all our social media platforms. We'll be right back with more. Keep it Channel 1.